Hey guys, this is Ray Ortega, your host from the Build with Tech podcast. I want to say welcome back to our episode. In this new episode, we have a special guest. His name is Michael Hemsey. He is the president and CEO of Tricycle Marketing, and he has over 25 years experience in creating loyalty programs and building technology within his business to optimize it. So I hope you can learn a lot from this podcast, and let's get straight to the episode.
This is the Build with Tech podcast, where we dive into the minds of business leaders, building tech-enabled businesses to launch and scale profitable enterprises. With your host, Ray Ortega.
Hey, Michael. Welcome to the Build with Tech podcast. How's it going today?
Fabulous. Thank you, Ray. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for coming on. I know we had a conversation the other day, and I really wanted to tell your story about you, your business, technology, all that kind of stuff that's involved. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you got started and how you got to where you got to today.
Well, I'm going to have to go back a few years. There's always been a thread in my career of marketing and technology. And I've spent a lot of time on the agency side of life. And on the agency side of life, you're typically providing services and tech to brands, helping them solve their problems. I was recruited to a company called ESC Loyalty in the early 2000s. And ESC Loyalty was focused on an industry I didn't know existed at the time, but an industry focused on the technology and marketing of loyalty programs of brands. So a lot of ESC's initial clients were banks who offered credit cards and debit cards, and you would earn points as you used their products. And then over time, you would redeem those points for things like travel and gift cards and merchandise. And, as I look back now, almost 25 years later, I have spent all of my time really focused in the loyalty industry. From ESC Loyalty, we were acquired by a global credit card processor called TSYS, who wanted to bolt on loyalty capabilities to their offering. I went to a company called Kobie Marketing here in St. Pete for almost 10 years and helped them build and grow an organization that served over 50 brands globally across different industries. So think about retail programs, travel programs, restaurants, entertainment, healthcare. As time went on, and probably no surprise to you, Ray, a lot of the brands we interact with offer some version of a loyalty program. From Kobie, I went on to a company called Merkle, which was the largest privately held digital marketing company in the country. It was acquired by Dentsu a few years ago. And as I took a little bit of time off and thought about what to do next, I considered basically two paths. Number one is I go back to the agency life. Number two was I go to the brand side. And number three, actually, what I ended up choosing was joining a former colleague of mine who had purchased an agency and joining him as a partner to actually deliver tech and marketing to compete in the industry he and I both had been in for the last 20 some odd years.
When you were going through that process, what was like the considering factor that led you, because I'm assuming you chose option number three, right? You just said
I did,
it, right?
Yes.
And what led to that? What were kind of the factors that you were thinking about when you were going through that process?
That's a great question. So, the short sort of version of it is, for all of those years, I had the privilege of increased responsibility from my time at ESC to TSYS to Kobie to Merkle to Dentsu and now to Tricycle. And for, several of those organizations, I either ran all of the revenue or I was the president / CEO. And in each of those cases, I was working for someone else who owned the company. And so I, had this wonderful experience of running and growing agencies. Through that time, I always said to myself and to my now partner, wouldn't it be great if we owned our own company in this space? What would we do differently? If we could reimagine everything, what would that look like? And so when he approached me as I was going through this evaluation process, it was a little bit of serendipity of an older dream sort of being dusted off to say, okay, well, now here's actually an opportunity, while it comes with far greater risk, that I would have the chance to take advantage of all of the learnings and the over 100 different implementations I've been a part of in my career and try to go compete in this space. So that opportunity of ownership and sort of reimagining what could be delivered to the market was a primary driver to overcome my fear of the risk of, going to work for a large brand who needs, an executive CMO, or taking on an agency who's been around for a long time and trying to help them grow. This by far was the riskiest, but it appealed to me. I'm not sure it was the smartest decision, but I'm 2 years into it.
I can relate. I worked at a couple startups before I started my company, and it was kind of the similar situation. Like, you're involved in the business and the growing of the business and the relationships and the partnerships, and you kind of realize, man, I could do this on my own. And you kind of decide to go on your own that way. You mentioned one thing a second ago, like you went with someone that's a partner, right? And I went in with a partner as well when I started my company. How was the trust factor there? Like, did you know this person very, very well? Did you, like, what's the history behind you and your partner?
Yeah, that's a great question. So his name is Don, and I met Don. He was hired as the head of technology back in my days at ESC Loyalty before we acquired a TSYS. So he and I got to, at that time, I was in charge of all the clients and the revenue. He was in charge of the tech. And so we were a natural partnership in the organization, because whenever a brand wanted to work with us, they were hiring us for our tech, but I was responsible for the client relationship, making sure that what technology was delivering met the client requirements. So he and I, for all of those years, slayed many dragons together, working with brands like Citibank and Home Depot and Capital One and JP Morgan Chase, really bolstered our relationship. From there, I got recruited to become the president at Kobie Marketing, and Don was my second hire, no surprise. I said, hey, we need a new platform. Would you like to move from Atlanta to St. Pete? So he pulled up in his wagon, and, for the next 10 years, we helped take Kobie from a smaller boutique sort of presence in the market to, frankly, ranked number one by Forrester for 5 years running in our space. So we had that long, long history together. When I went to Merkle, we separated for 5 years. He went off and bought this agency, helped the owner earn out, restructured the finances, cleaned up the books, cleaned up the teams, reorganized the business, and began a 2-year journey of building the platform that he ended up calling me up one day while I was evaluating and said, Michael, I want you to come meet me at a restaurant. I want to show you something. And so when I went to go meet him, we had all of those years of history. And so, as a consequence of that, there was a huge foundation of trust between us. So,
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. And I want to make one distinction here about that story, because I definitely think people need to understand this. I recorded a podcast last week, and another guest had kind of talked about their partnership, with their other business person. And one of the things that both of you guys actually are establishing here is, there's a tech side. So you have a tech side of the business, but then you have to have the business side of the business. And you guys actually complemented each other. You have one.
Yes.
He was the tech guy. You were the business guy. That's kind of what you're saying, right? Am I clear?
That's right. And when he approached me about Tricycle Marketing, he said, Michael, I just want to be the tech guy. I want you to be the CEO and president and do everything else. So, in that way, we have very complementary skills that we bring to the table, and we partner really well together.
Every startup that I've ever been at, or even if you've ever gone to like a Y Combinator or any one of these technical incubators, they all say the same thing. If you're a technical guy, stay with the technical side and go hire a business guy. If you're a business guy and you need a technical person, go get a technical person. But
right.
keep those responsibilities separated, because each of you are going to succeed drastically in those areas individually. So now you said something earlier, and I think we talked about this the other day on the phone, because this part intrigued me the most, because it seems like you went straight to the Fortune 500. Like, you started the business and you guys are getting, like, I mean, you're talking about Citibank, JP Morgan Chase. How did you get those clients? Because normally when people start a business, they're starting with all the small businesses and kind of working their way up. How did you get there?
So for my time at Tricycle, those clients I mentioned, Citibank and JP Morgan Chase, those were the clients Don and I had worked on over those previous companies. So when I came to Tricycle had its own history of clients. It had been around since 1996, but it was very much focused in healthcare, medical, med device, pharmaceutical, that whole world, which, if you think about loyalty, is not the first industry you think of. You don't earn loyalty points when you go visit a doctor or you buy some drugs, right?
Yeah.
But what Don saw in the company was they worked with great brands like J&J, Becton Dickinson, 3M. They did projects with NFL, ESPN. So there was some great history there and some great tech.
Yeah.
When I joined, I took 8 months with Don's permission to evaluate the opportunity in the tech. So we put it out in front of different people and players in our space. During that time, we negotiated our agreements between ourselves with respect to the business. He was very supportive of me taking the platform he showed me out and getting candid feedback from trusted people, brands, clients we've worked with in the past, consulting firms. So in that evaluation process, we started to get the word out. When I announced that I joined the company 2 years ago on LinkedIn, for whatever reason, I had 15,000 views of that announcement and, 500 likes. And these were clients I'd worked with in the past, from brands all over the world. So I think the answer is the reason we had permission to talk to Fortune 500 companies about this not a new company, but a new offering in an established industry, it was because of the reputation, I like to think in part, that I brought to the table, that Don brought to the table from working at other companies and working with these brands, for them to say, okay, well, I'm intrigued, Michael. Why did you do this? What are you guys doing? What's different about you? And fortunately, it's really, about those relationships from all those years ago that are manifesting in conversations and opportunities today.
That is a great way, and I think a good lesson for people that are watching and listening, that sometimes you just need to go work somewhere and develop the relationships so that you can take that Rolodex to your business when you start going out on your own.
That's exactly right.
I know several tech startups that have done that. In fact, my mentor had done that, worked for a government contractor, developed the relationships with the government, and then started his own firm and brought over some of those government contracts with him. So that is a great lesson, I think, that people need to hear about that. So
the other thing I would add to that, Ray, that you reminded me of, and I'm sort of giggling to myself, it's been 2 years since I've joined Tricycle. And what I would say to you and to the crew listening is that, while I did proactively reach out to some folks in the early days of assessment, what I did not do when I joined was take my Rolodex and blast everyone with an email saying, take a look at what we have. Because while I recognized the power of what Don had built, I also recognized, and so did he, that there was a long way to go. And so instead of proactively marketing ourselves before we felt we were ready, what we did do was respond to opportunities that came to us, and they did. We were reactive, which was kind of nice. So, hey, we heard you're doing this. Would you show us? Or, hey, would you come bid on this? But what I would say, Ray, is it took 2 years. It wasn't until the end of last year that I felt going into 2024 that this was the year to put the gas pedal down on marketing and sales, to be proactive to that Rolodex and ideally take advantage of it, because now I feel like we've been through 6 or 7 product release cycles. We've onboarded clients onto the platform. We've built this sort of stealth reputation and offering. And so now it's this year that we're saying, okay, it's time to shout it from the rafters.
Well, first of all, you mentioned a quote unquote disclaimer. Thanks for covering me on that one, because you're right. You don't want to take your Rolodex from the company you worked for and then immediately go and start your thing and start blasting people, because that actually has a bad look to it. And so
it can, but put it this way, Ray, if I felt we were ready 2 years ago, I would have done that. It was my Rolodex.
You would have done it.
It's my LinkedIn accounts. But it's more a notion of, when are you truly ready? Because you only have one shot. If I were to say to you, Ray, take it 20 minutes or half an hour, and you're looking at something, oh no, that's interesting, guys, but there's 15 things, and we already know that there's 15 things. Like what that doesn't advance anything for anybody, versus approaching you now and say, Ray, I have something to show you. Now I'm sitting back going, okay, I want you to find the hole in it. Like now that we feel that we're ready. And really, to me, that's an important distinction.
What was it about the product, though, that was not ready?
What the platform had, what Don showed me, the design tenets of the platform were spot on. And what by that I mean, what is your reason for creating a solution? And what are your reasons? And if you were to summarize that for people to say, okay, give me the 5 or 6 or 10 bullets of why you built this thing, what were your North Stars. All of those things from day one resonated with me. I mean, I was the one that put them into words for him after I listened to what he built and why. I was like, okay, this. And as we showed it to people when they asked to see it, we would always lead with that. This is why we built it. Here are the problems that we're solving. So the design tenets were on point. Now, there's two other pieces of the puzzle in technology sales. One is the actual capabilities of the platform. And then the second is the commercials. How are you going to sell it and contract it? And how are you going to offer it to brands? From a commercial side, I figured that out immediately how to differentiate. So we had the design tenets and the commercials. But on the capability side, while there was some great raw material there, it needed refinement. And refinement comes from requirements. And requirements come from talking to potential clients in the market and listening to what they need from you. And it's also when they see your tech and evaluate it for either a half an hour, or in some cases, the consulting firms took 6 or 7 hours to go through the tech. And they come back to you with a list of where you're strong, where you're equal, where you're weak. You have an opportunity to decide, okay, am I going to go attack these weaknesses, or are we doing that on purpose? Do I want to be more competitive where I'm even? And how do we continue to dominate where we dominate? And in my view, you can only really achieve that after a few cycles of product development and release. And so it was by the end of last year and I think it was our 7.4 release last year that I was like, okay, our capabilities have now matched the design tenets and the commercials are ready to go. And I think that's why this year we're seeing us being pulled into opportunities with brands that are really exciting. 2 of the top 10 banks in the country, 2 of the top 10 automotive manufacturers in the country, large consulting firms that serve globally, interesting brands from our own client base as well as new ones. And we're having these conversations. And when they look at our capabilities, they're saying things to us like, no one else has this and anyone else we've looked at. If I showed it to them a year ago, it would not have been that reaction. So there's that patience and sort of that development timeline that you have to go through.
One of the things that we talk about is pain points, right? What is the problem? You mentioned it earlier. You had to go back to your customer and find out what are the problems that you're actually going to solve. What is this platform going to solve for them? You just reminded me of last night. Last night I read a business plan. I was sent the business plan from the consulting work that I do. And I went through that business plan, and the whole plan spent most of the time on, this is what we're doing. This is how we're going to scale. This is how we're going to use your funds to build a team. This is how we're going to expand within 3 years. Like, not once did they mention the business plan, the problem that they're solving, what's the pain point, and how and why their solution is going to solve that problem. The whole time I'm sitting there going, where's the problem? Like, where's the pain point?
Right.
And how are they going to solve that for the customer? So we're talking about your business. We're talking about loyalty programs, right? That's your business is focused on loyalty. Can you give the audience a rundown of what that actually means? Because you've been talking about your customer, the pain point. You've been talking about the platform and how you had to wait 2 years.
Sure.
I'm sure someone listening right now is going, what does he do? Like, what is this thing that he's doing? so let us know, like, what's the platform?
Okay. I think a simple way to describe it to folks is if I were telling it to my parents, who they still don't know what I do, and God bless them. But if you go to like an AMC theaters, or if you swipe your credit card at a terminal, or you buy an airline ticket, or you visit a hotel, or you go to a restaurant, anywhere where you're a member of a program, think of the different channels by which you interact with a brand. Channels can be their website. It could be their mobile application. It could be a kiosk where you punch out your movie tickets. It could be calling customer service because there's an issue. It could be good old-fashioned employee interaction with an iPad. Any channel that a brand has with its customers is a channel by which they're trying to do 2 things. Number 1, advance you along a journey. And that journey typically at a high level is, okay, you're either a lead or a prospect, you're either a customer or a returning customer, or you're in our loyalty program and you're gold, silver, bronze, elite, you're in those tiers. Or maybe you're a brand evangelist, which means you're actually referring customers to us. You love this, you love us so much, you're saying, I want to refer my friends and family into you. Now, when the movie theater or the bank or the airline or the hotel or the restaurant want to inspire you, they're offering you points or miles or whatever they call their currency. And so when you think about real-time interaction, buying something at a retail location, getting your points immediately, going to a website, downloading a mobile app, all of these interactions are generating currency. While the platform, what we do, our technology, integrates to all of those channels, either in real time, near real time, or in batch communication. And we're minting currency and storing it and saving it and all of the rules of the programs and the campaigns, et cetera, behind the scenes, so that when customers redeem that currency to get their gift cards or their airline tickets or what have you, that whole system is accounted for. I mean, the value of a loyalty program to a brand, if you think about some of the larger brands in the world, the points they've minted and the miles they've minted sometimes is more valuable than other revenue sources of the company. I mean, these are very large numbers. So the technology has to, have every transaction accounted for. Think of AMC theaters on a large release weekend. Any events that occur and the volumes that hit these different channels, the technology behind the scenes is making sure that all of that currency is flowing, all of those campaigns are running, and they're treating Ray Ortega differently than Michael Hemsey because, maybe you're the platinum member, but I'm just a lowly bronze guy. And so we earn differently, we burn differently, we have different rules and things like this. So that's what brands use technology for. On the marketing side of it, they'll come to agencies like us and say, what should we take to market? How do we compete with our competitors? What should the branding be? Who should our audiences be? How should we tier our program? How should we value that currency? So there's a whole creative consulting side of the coin, and then there's the tech side that actually makes it all happen in the real world. And that's what companies like Tricycle Marketing do. We offer that tech, and we provide the studio side if they need it or want it.
You guys bought the company? Is that how it went?
So yes, the agency was purchased, but the tech was built from scratch. So there were elements of the technology that we loved. Because Tricycle served healthcare and med tech and med device and pharma, they were steeped in data security and privacy, HIPAA issues. So there were some great, beautiful building blocks, but the company was not in any way, shape, or form a loyalty tech provider. They weren't minting currency or campaigns. So there was a very large body of work to take those technology assets and create the platform that we've taken to market that we have.
That's interesting. How did you guys? Because it's very intriguing. Because you bought a company that had a certain business plan, essentially,
right? And
then you basically create a whole different plan out of it. How did that transition work? What kind of challenges did you run into when you were doing that?
Well, fortunately, not many, because the R&D side of the house focused on development of the platform, taking those legacy assets and dusting them off or retiring some or building new, did not affect the core business at the time. These were separate work streams, separate resources. So clients were never impacted. Our teams were never impacted. And the R&D team, frankly, could go as fast as they wished to without any client impact, which is also a rare environment to develop within. And I would say a wonderful one. So that's how we sort of threaded that needle. And oh, by the way, there are existing clients in those spaces like J&J and 3M and Becton Dickinson and others, Owens and Minor, Crest and so on. They all used our tech. So when we told them what we were doing around loyalty, they were like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they started giving us use cases we weren't even contemplating. Can we use loyalty? J&J asked to help with our sales force. Can we use loyalty to and currency to promote the consumption of media for our advertising spend? Taking that loyalty currency and leveraging it in ways that brands haven't done before, to me, was sort of another aha moment in the process that I wasn't even considering. Sales enablement. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Content consumption. Oh, wow, that's neat. Media buying. Okay, sure. That was never the focus of brands, but all of a sudden I'm seeing over the last year or so these new requirements coming in, leveraging that same tech. So
yeah, I really want to touch on that because I think that's a really great piece of information there. I think people need to understand is that the thing is, like, you had you had a company that was providing, it was a product or service company before.
It was both, actually. They had tech and they did all the services. Yeah.
Okay. So you had something there already. You had customers, and then what you were doing was starting a whole nother product, but leveraging the fact that you already had these relationships with these previous customers.
That's right.
If you look at Jackson and Hewitt, Deloitte, or some of these large consulting agencies, they were originally financial consulting agencies. They were like accounting firms.
Right.
And then they created a tech consulting out of that. And then they already had all the big businesses as their accounting clients, and they moved them over. It's a very similar situation. I'm just talking, I just said that to give a broader high level, like a big scale version of it. But
right.
You guys, that's
true.
what you did. And it's really, you're creating new products. You're just creating new products and then kind of funneling your current customers into those new products. I'm really interested in how you had no challenges, because we've done this, by the way, in our company. We provide this service. We're a consulting agency on the technical side, and we have started to transition over into our own product. But we're taking resources from the agency side and then doing the product. Did you guys ever cross-pollinate that, or did you, like you said, you had new resources, but where did all the funding come from for the new resources?
Fortunately, Tricycle, having been around since 1996, was a profitable and isn't a profitable agency. We did not need outside investment. We did not need to take on or sell any sort of version of shares. We were approached by folks willing to write checks, proactively saying, Michael, let me know, please. We had companies approach us to say, after they heard us speak or saw our tech, saying we want to buy in. And prior to me joining, Don was avoiding that also, and instead just leveraging the fact that the company was making money. Now, one way we helped thread that needle to understand if there would be an impact is that we split the P&Ls. So studios had its own P&L finally, technology had its own P&L, and the company then had its own sort of, obviously, umbrella over that, but also the things in support of both studios and tech were sort of outside of that group. And when we sort of looked at that picture, it was like, okay, yes, you are borrowing from the profitability of studios to fund technology, but if we're doing that in such a way not to have to take on any debt or outside investors, we're happy to do it. Now, could we have done things faster if we, approach that problem differently? The answer, Ray, is probably 1,000% yes. Did it require a lot of patience? Were there many nights I'm like, Jesus Christ, I hope this works out. Waiting, 2 years is a long time to be patient in this space and, create that kind of momentum. So there was plenty of anxiety to go around for everybody. But, because studios is its own healthy P&L, and because we staged development as we did not have that impact from a resource perspective or a financial perspective. And you could argue maybe we should have taken on some debt or investors to go faster, but I don't think so.
You beat me to that one statement about the whole stress and waiting 2 years, because in the industry in general, anything tech, it's like a first mover benefit, right?
That's right.
Person that gets to market wins. And I can just imagine you having this thing that you're building and going 2 years going like, I hope nobody else builds this while we're building this thing. So
it's true.
Did you guys do like a stealth mode thing, or was it just kind of, you just went by, just hoping that nobody could figure it out?
Well, it's a great question, and it's an interesting thought process, and it requires a little bit of background. So when you sell loyalty technology to a brand, this could be a year-long sales cycle. Okay, these contracts are typically 3 years. Call it. It could be longer, a little bit shorter, but call it 3 years. When you launch this technology, it's a massive effort to implement it. It takes time and resources, and it could take months. It could cost $500,000. It could cost $1 million just to launch the platform. And now when you're launched, the agencies that are out there today, they charge you retainer fees and tech fees. And every time you want to change something, it's more fees. And you're reliant on those agencies to use the tech on your behalf to get stuff in market. And if you looked at Forrester's report on loyalty providers, there's probably a dozen or so, 20 or so around the globe that are of substantial size in terms of tech revenue, serving 90% of the market. Now, I did have agita about our secret sauce getting out, about our approach to our design tenets and our capabilities and our commercials. But then I would sleep well at night because our competition simply isn't designed the way we were. Like the commercial approach we're taking and the capability approach we're taking are 180 degrees opposite of where these agencies are. And I know this because I ran 3 of them. As a CEO of these other legacy agencies, I love change control. I love 6-month implementations. I love retainers. I love tech fees. I love margin. I want to charge you as much as I can to do everything always because I want teams of people to serve you, Ray, like you're the brand, right?
Yeah.
Whereas to juxtapose that legacy reality with our model, which is basically, if I were to summarize it in a phrase, we built our platform in such a way that you never need us to do anything. We don't want you to need us to stand it up. We don't want you to need us to run it. We don't want you to have to pay us retainers. And oh, by the way, if you actually want to purchase the asset, the source code itself, we will sell it to you and allow you to self-innovate, or you could buy into our roadmap in an ongoing way vis-a-vis maintenance. So just that one design tenet of never need us again, transform the capabilities in the platform. And that's 180 degrees different than what I don't want to say all of our competitors, but most of the competitors that I am aware of have not approached this industry in this particular way.
Just you saying that, though, that's a heck of a differentiator. Like, as you just said it, my ears perked up like, oh, my God, like, that's crazy. Because
right.
that's going to be the reaction of someone when you say that to them. Because
right.
They're used to the fees. They're used to the monthly recurring revenue. That's what every company's going for, right? Annual recurring revenue. I mean, even us in the custom software world, right? We, and I share your philosophy, by the way, on this. We try to work ourselves out of a job. That's been our philosophy. And that's been our differentiator for the 10 years I've had my company, Grata Software. And so but the thing is like, everyone's so used to, like, you do the technology to a point so that they have to come back to you so that you can continue doing the technology and continue and continue. And by the way, that's the model of most offshore firms like in India and Brazil and all these other, because that's their model. Their model is to this long-term retainer, continuous monthly recurring revenue for a long period of time. It's just awesome to hear that because that's a heck of a differentiator to hear that. And I mean, who's your competitor at that point?
Right.
On that note, though, how do you handle that when it comes to how did it benefit the company when it comes to scalability, growth, and stuff like that? Because you are kind of saying, hey, listen, we don't really need your money over time on a consistent basis. So then so are you always looking for new customers, or do you have a lifetime customer value that extends past a certain timeline? Like, how does that work in your business?
Yeah. So there's a couple of ways to look at it. Because we designed the platform as we did, so that a customer can bring it in-house, they can bring it to a trusted agency, they don't need us, they don't have to pay us, they still need to license the tech. So there's an annual license fee, and we're also a little different commercially there too, in that we approach it as a fixed fee. So that therefore your database can get as large as it needs to be, and your price doesn't need to go up as a consequence. So that is very attractive to marketers at these brands who, if you think about it, they may have, call it 1 million people in their loyalty program, but they may have 10 million people in their customer database. Not everyone becomes a loyalty member. So if they could leverage that tech across their entire database for a fixed fee, we're now competing in that way as well. And so in that way, there's lifetime value to the relationship. If they do purchase the asset and bring it inside, we'd go away. But guess what? That transaction is lifetime value in a transaction. And exactly. It's a big marketplace if you think of all the brands and all the industries. And the other comment I would make is my brother asked me this question. What about teams of people and growing the company and client services and project managers? And I said, well, the difference, Chris, in this case is I don't wish to do that. Like I had to do that at these other companies. That's the model. You got to keep growing the team and feeding the birds. But if we did this right from a tech perspective, we want to be as lean as possible. I don't want unnecessary overhead that I have to then charge back to my clients. I don't want them to have to pay for the product roadmap. So it's just a very different mindset going in anything I've worked in 25 years. And again, talk to me in a year or two and I'll let you know if we're successful or not. But I will say to you, Ray, that this sort of messaging and demonstration of our tech in support of the messaging has been really well received so far.
That's awesome. And just for our audience, I just want to touch on a few things that you had just mentioned, and just for vocabulary reasons, right? So we talked about differentiator, and obviously that's, we just talked about, that's the unique selling proposition that you're bringing to your customer by doing what you're saying, not having monthly recurring costs and extra fees and all that kind of stuff, which is something different in the industry that you're accustomed to, or the industry's accustomed to. So that's right. The first thing. Lifetime value, I definitely want to touch on that for anyone that's listening. When we're talking about customer lifetime value, we're talking about the amount of total funds that you can get from one customer over the life of them being your customer. So what would you say in your business is your average lifetime value for a customer?
It's an interesting question. I would say on the tech side, if you took a 3-year average for a contract value and, you took sort of a lower end annual value, call it $250,000. I think that's a fairly reasonable target number.
That's ours, actually. Ours is about 250,000 lifetime value per customer. So we're tracking.
And so, and multiply that by 3 for the value of the contract. And, can you make 750? Is that a reasonable estimate for a value? If I sold a larger brand on this tech, I would say, yes, that would be an expected value. And maybe more, because maybe they don't want to get over it, or maybe they want to purchase it at the end of it saying, this was a good ride, but we just want to take it and run, so that would be accretive to the value. But it is a great concept to understand, for the different tiers of customers you're serving. Not everyone's Fortune 500, right? So you have to have a notion of those markets, and the answer is different for each, but it is a smart metric to track too.
And then you also mentioned you want to be as lean as possible. And for the audience out there, obviously when he's talking about lean, he's talking about the most minimal resources you possibly need in order to get the exact result that you're looking for.
That's right.
And in your business specifically, when you say lean, what does that mean to you?
I've worked in companies, where we had just rich resources around us, client services people, project managers, business analysts, solution architects, developers, QA resources, back-end engineers, the whole kit and caboodle. These days, lean is whether you're leveraging offshore to get some work done, or you're leveraging AI for some of the more mundane tasks, that you keep your team, the mind share of the vision and the requirements and the aesthetics, right, of the delivery. I'm talking like 2 or 3 people. And if you can keep it focused in that way, then the resources you bring in to support are at least all coming into a consistent world. So your output is, uniform and scalable and traceable and trackable. And when you're deploying code, it's working without having to go through 15 QA cycles. That's the notion of lean that we, work in within Tricycle. And it wasn't always possible in these other organizations because there was lines of demarcation around accountability, and requirements get dropped, or I thought you meant this, or I thought you meant that. And so in my experience, when you don't have those layers, you minimize some of that noise, which is really helpful in the development process.
You mentioned AI. What do you guys, have you guys even dove into AI? Are you guys doing anything in AI at this point?
One of our client requirements was they explained how they invested in AI. And they have algorithms, and you're going to love this, Ray, for tracking and predicting for customer lifetime value. And their question to us was, can your loyalty decision engine pick up our algorithms in real time so that when Michael Hemsey comes in versus Ray Ortega, the AI algorithm could tell you where they fall, and then have your decision engine, choose its own adventure so that Ray gets this offer and Michael gets that offer. So that's integrating with AI and machine learning in real time, affecting how our technology makes a decision. And I think that's, fantastic. On the back end side of leveraging AI, we've used it for translation services across language because our platform had to be able to be translated into these languages. But other than that, those are the two areas that we've leveraged it to date.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in on that so bad on the lifetime value thing, because that is the right use of AI. That is
right.
Like, we sit here, we preach all the time about, because everyone wants to use the term AI, and you just said it right there. It's not only an algorithm, it's not only a model, but at the end of the day, there's a decision being made, and the system is making that decision. That is the part that people forget that AI really is. Everyone thinks that the machine learning is the AI. No, the machine learning is machine learning. It's predictive analytics. That's all it is. It's the AI, which is the decision making and the action after it has all the data, right? And that is the right use of AI. That I love to hear that you guys are using AI for that, because we have these conversations all the time with all these businesses about AI, and we always, when they're finished talking, I'm like, you mean predictive analytics that has existed for the last 15 years,
forever, right?
It's like, it's a whole different thing. Where do you see your company in the next 5 years?
Come on. I'm focused on the next 5 months. I'll tell you this, if the next 5 months prove to deliver the momentum that the last 5 months did, and the last 5 months before that, and if those 5 month cycles continue, in 5 years, Ray, have me back on the show and we'll have a cigar together.
There you go.
It's a large market that we play in, and there are many brands out there. There's great competition out there. If we were to capture our own little piece of that market share over the next 5 years, and do it in a way to keep to our vision and to keep lean and to keep listening to client requirements and keep growing our studios business, to me, that would be the definition of success. I told my daughter, she's a recent graduate of Notre Dame, and she works at an agency on the PR side of the world in Atlanta. And I said, the day I can afford you to hire you is the day that I will tell you the company is a success. So, she's rooting for that too.
So we've talked a bit about your company. We've talked about, what you guys are doing, and then obviously the future. I want to get a little bit more personal on some of these personal questions. I know I sent you a list of questions. I hope you went through these, because I'm going to hit you with some of these. All right. So first question, what is a hobby or interest that you have that's outside of work?
I mean, I love travel in general. I love golf when I can. I love the arts, music, theater. Spending time with friends. I consider all those things hobbies. And I use that to get me through my day and to keep that work-life balance. Because the days can accordion in terms of the need of my focus. And so taking advantage of windows of opportunity to do things to keep sane and, sort of tethered and free thinking is really important. I also love to write. I do a lot of writing too.
When you write, are you like writing, like free writing, or is it like you like to write stories, books, movies? Like what do you like to write?
I've written a lot of the above, essays, short stories, little screenplays, poems. When I'm writing these days, though, some of it could become story form down the road, but a lot of it, frankly, is around business. How am I going to respond, to these executives, or how am I going to frame this presentation, or how do I want to tell this story to this audience for this conference? Just sort of keeping that creative flow. It applies in really all aspects of life. But if I look back at my notebook, a lot of the ideas I'm writing are focused on business these days, with the occasional creative idea for, an essay or a story down the road. Do
you find yourself, and this is purely for my own personal reason, do you find yourself when you're writing, because I have several books, like little notepads, and then I also have, and then I got this app that I use to write. It's called Good Notes. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
I feel like I have, but I don't believe I've ever used it.
But yeah, it allows you to create like multiple diaries and you can create as many books as you want to write, and that's why I have this stylus. In fact, as I'm taking notes on this, I'm in there doing it, right? I'm using it for that. But like, do you find yourself you have like stuff written everywhere, and they're all fragmented? Like nothing is a full, complete thought yet.
So I use for the digital side, I use Remarkable. which is a
Okay.
pretty cool touch screen. It has a nice feel like you're writing. And prior to that, I used to use the good old fashioned, Moleskine, notepads, and just, I'd have lists and fragmented thoughts. And my whole goal was to sort of check every single one of those off. That's like my massive ongoing to-do list. Condensing to Remarkable, like GoodNotes, has been a way to keep, I probably have 85 different notebooks in this thing, either organized by client or topic or to-do list or, what have you. And I find that to be really helpful.
Yeah, and like I said, my good notes, I had everything's fragmented. I probably every day have like an idea or ideas, and I write them in there. But the reason why I like good notes is because it has a search feature. Because I forgot what page some of the stuff that I've written
I like
is
that.
on. So I have to use a search feature to figure out. Like, in fact, I took notes. I think when we had our phone call, I took notes. And I don't know what page it was on, so I typed in your name in the search, and it went straight to the page where
I like that feature. Remarkable does not have that feature, so I'm going to have to look at GoodNotes.
Because I had looked at Remarkable, by the way, because a friend of mine uses Remarkable religiously, and I was looking at that. But then the GoodNotes came out, and I tried it, and the one thing I wanted was I wanted two things. I wanted the search feature, and then I wanted to have it take my handwriting and make it into a regular print text.
Smart.
Those are the two features that I wanted, and it had both, so that's why I went.
All right, well, I'm gonna have to check it out, Ray.
This is actually a follow up to the last question, because this is, how do you unwind after a busy day?
Well, I have a French bulldog, so I take her for a long walk. I'm not opposed to cooking a meal. I'm not opposed to a glass of wine, or a good bourbon, or a phone call with some friends. But usually the wind down part is taking a nice long walk, catching a sunset or what have you, and, just getting into a different kind of mindset.
I feel like I need to get a dog now, just so I can do the same. Because I think everyone has answered the same way.
Really?
Every person I've interviewed has said the same thing. Yeah, they go for a walk with their dog in the evening. And I'm like, maybe I need a dog so that I can go for a long walk.
I highly recommend it, yeah.
Favorite book, TV?
In book, I'll go back to one I read in college called Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, and I'd throw that out there. But again, I love books. I've read a million authors. It's hard to, you got to pick a genre. I like Jack Reacher, Lee Child's invention.
Nice. Yes.
Of course, so it just depends on the mood. But as an author, one of my favorite authors, I would say, is Tom Robbins. I would put his name out there.
What book is Tom Robbins done?
He's wrote, I don't know, maybe a dozen or so, and maybe some have been made into a movie. But Still Life for Woodpecker is one of his more famous ones. He's just I'm not even sure if he's still alive, but if you Google him and sort of pick up any of his work, it's a combination of philosophy, insight, technology, absurdism. Like the guy's a genius.
Tell me, or tell the audience, actually, not me, but tell the audience. So where can they find you? Where can they find more information about you, your business?
Well, on LinkedIn for sure. Link in with me, and we could have a direct connection. If they want to read about Tricycle, go to tricyclemarketing.com. And yeah, those would be the two ways I would recommend.
Awesome. And we'll put that information in the show notes, by the way. So at the bottom, we'll have links to those, to your LinkedIn and LinkedIn or link to Tricycle Marketing. Perfect. Any last piece of advice you want to give anyone who's looking at entrepreneurship?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure what I have in the way of advice for anyone that would be useful, but I will say, I think having clear design tenets as to what's guiding your efforts is really important to have crystallized, because it'll define everything, not just the tech you're building, but the kinds of clients you wish for, how you manage those clients, how you monetize those relationships. Like you said, Ray, what's the lifetime value of the opportunity? All of these things distill down into your North Stars. What are you building toward? And number two is, if you are an entrepreneur and have that appetite for risk, for me, I had to really work on being comfortable with being uncomfortably patient. There's only so much we can do. We put out in the universe, and these things take time. Just because you had a meeting, with a large brand and a group of executives The moment that meeting was over, they had 47 million things to worry about. And it could take months for these things to manifest. And it doesn't mean you're doing the wrong things. And it doesn't mean you should hound people for a next step. It just means that you have to have the notion of being Johnny Appleseed. You're planting. These things are going to grow at their own pace. Keep the ground moist, watered, tended to, and, your patience will be rewarded. So have the clear design tenets, be Johnny Appleseed, and be patient. That's all I got from myself. And then I'm going to go walk my dog after this podcast.
Wise words. Well, Michael, I appreciate your time today getting on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Ray.
On the
I
Build with
appreciate
Tech
it.
podcast. Yeah, it was awesome. Great information. I think the audience is going to love everything you have to say. And I think they're going to be very intrigued with your company. And if you're a corporation out there that you're looking for loyalty programs and you're looking for a platform for loyalty programs, please reach out to Michael. This whole purpose of this is to provide more exposure to people like Michael, entrepreneurs who have built a successful business. They're using technology. They're doing things the right way. They're providing good value to their customers. So please, by all means, reach out to them and be a customer. Invest in yourself, but invest in people, good people.
I love it.
So like and follow on the podcast. Make sure to check out Build with Tech, our school community as well. Again, thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Ray.
Appreciate it. And yeah, thanks everybody.